Is relentless mediocrity killing Star Wars, as Forbes Magazine has recently suggested, with the latest Ahsoka show on Disney Plus coming from the Walt Disney Company and Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy? We're going to talk about that today, along with some new numbers for Ahsoka's premiere from Samba TV. And guess what? They're up to their old tricks again. Lots of spin and a lot of head scratching. Here we go. Renegade Online. Well, folks, welcome back. Another great day here at Valiant Renegade. It's good to see everybody out there once again. And if you are like one of the many folks watching this video, not yet subscribed to this channel, please take a moment and turn that little red subscribe button to gray. Hit that like button, hit that notification bell, share this sucker out on the social medias, and of course, please do leave a comment before you head out the door today. So let's jump right in here from Forbes Magazine. Relentless mediocrity is killing Star Wars. But it doesn't have to be this way. This from Erik Kain at Forbes. Star Wars has lost its way. I think it lost its way long before Disney acquired Lucasfilm, though the sins of the House of Mouse tend to differ fundamentally from the shortcomings of George Lucas himself. The former has inundated us with unsatisfying content. The latter let his once brilliant IP wither on the vine. Now, I'm going to stop right there to remind folks these are not my thoughts. These are the thoughts of Forbes Magazine. This brought me to a different headline that I was toying around with. Andor has ruined Star Wars for me. Now, the author believes that Andor was simply so much better than anything else from the Disney era, and many of the folks watching this video might agree with that statement. Mandalorian Season 3 felt cheap and directionless and slapdash. The less said about Obi-Wan Kenobi and the Book of Boba Fett, the better. Ahsoka, so far at least, leaves much to be desired. All of this money and so little to show for it. Star Wars has become relentlessly mediocre. It's not that there isn't anything to like about these shows. It's that they all feel half-baked and overblown, like butter spread over too little bread, as Bilbo once described himself. Did Obi-Wan really need to be a TV series? It had enough content for a 2-hour movie. The rest felt awkward, often rather boring filler. The new Willow series was dreadful for many reasons, not the least of which was Disney's inability to hire talented writers. I can't help but wonder if it might have been better as a 90-minute film. Does Ahsoka need to be an 8-episode series, or would it have been better served as a more tightly drawn film? I can't answer that yet. But looking back on most of the Star Wars and Marvel Disney Plus shows, I can honestly say that the vast majority, with few exceptions, would have made better movies than shows. And to that end, that's one thing that we have discussed here on Valiant Renegade quite frequently, both on our videos and our live streams, with many of our featured guests. The thing with Star Wars and Marvel, both, is that they seem to have taken great movie concepts, or at least in practice, what could have been great movie concepts, and then overbloated them and artificially stretched them into 8 or even 9-episode seasons with a ton of filler. And I think Erik at Forbes has a valid argument here, being concerned that Ahsoka will look probably no different. Now, while the author spends some time lauding the accomplishments of Andor in his opinion, he does harken back to the Star Wars sequel trilogy produced by Disney that was, in his words, not only rushed, it was incoherent, with nobody overseeing an overarching storyline for all 3 films. This oversight, I don't think that oversight is the right word. Let's talk about mass incompetence. Let's talk about business malpractice and malfeasance on the part of Disney, and more specifically, Disney not keeping the ratchet pinned down on Kathleen Kennedy's head, who failed everybody. This oversight, this dreadful calamity, remains utterly baffling to me. With just a little effort and care, not to mention competent management, the trilogy could have been mapped out all at once, with a compelling arc from episodes 7 to 9. Instead, we get whiplash between each film. Relentless, unabating mediocrity prevails time and time again. And note, he is referencing all three films, including the ones that critics praised so highly. Of course, the one that wrecked Star Wars' entire fandom, Rian Johnson's debacle, The Last Jedi. And I think here Erik has a great point where he says, one could argue the reason so much Star Wars content has felt like it's in one stage of identity crisis or another is because Disney's decision to start making all the new content for its streaming service Disney Plus, rather than releasing theatrically or on traditional cable television. They're old adages, but good ones, he says. Less is more. Quality over quantity. You pay for what you get. You reap what you sow. And if you want to save Star Wars, you have to make less Star Wars, and you need to release more of it in theaters. You can't just throw money at it and flood Disney Plus with content. You need to hire the most talented writers and directors and producers and costume designers and special effects people, and give them the time and money to make something great, and you'll make that profitable. And funny enough, what has the recently reinstated CEO Bob Iger said about Star Wars? Not only is Star Wars core for Disney, in Bob Iger's words, but he also said that Star Wars has to get back into theaters. I stated before he even returned as CEO many times that Star Wars and Lucasfilm was going to be the biggest thorn in Iger's side after he retired the first time. That man loves his legacy above all else, and he's going to get this stuff back into the theaters. Now, that doesn't mean the content that makes it back to theaters is actually going to be a big fan-pleasing affair. That is yet to be seen. But when it comes to Ahsoka, how is that doing on Disney Plus right now, just about a week into release? If we want to go tit for tat, look at this chart here. 1.6 million U.S. households watched the Season 3 premiere of The Mandalorian on Disney Plus. 1.2 million watched Ahsoka. Now, that's according to Samba TV, but if you look more closely at the reporting from Samba, you're going to notice an even bigger problem than just the readily apparent 400,000 viewer gap between Mando Season 3 and Ahsoka. According to Samba, that 1.6 million viewership U.S. household measurement was calculated between March 1st and 5th, the first 5 days of release for Mando Season 3. The 1.2 million U.S. households who watched the premiere of Ahsoka was over its first 6 days. That's right. Once again, Samba TV continues to manipulate the public data that they put out there in order to bolster their partners like Disney, who is paying Samba to help them with media and marketing research. That's been made public before. You can go back and Google that yourself. But if we dive even further to what Samba suggests, the latest new Star Wars series, Ahsoka, finally hit screens with 1.2 million households watching over the first 6 days. Not 3, not 4, not 5, like they have measured in the past, but 6 days. This is similar to the viewership of Andor's premiere season and slightly lower than Mandalorian's third season premiere over its first 6 days. Well, we don't really know what Mando's first 6 days were measured by Samba because Samba only told us the first 5 days, and that was at 1.6 million. So what was it over the first 6 days as opposed to 5? Was it 1.7? Was it 1.8? Remember, there were comparisons to Samba TV suggesting that Mando's numbers were actually weaker in some regard than the Book of Boba Fett, and we speculated at the time that, well, frankly, I wasn't all that surprised considering the amount of damage to the Star Wars series that they were putting on Disney Plus that the Book of Boba Fett did, particularly as it relates to Grogu. People were expecting Grogu at the end of Season 2 to go off with Luke Skywalker and stay there and become a Jedi. And then almost immediately, Grogu was returned back to Mando. They came up with a story later that said, 2 years had passed. But that made no sense. Not based on the events of how Book of Boba Fett began. That seemed like the show started moments after, or just maybe a few days after the end of Season 2 of The Mandalorian. How did we get 2 years out of this? This was all back in BS and CYA, I think, from Disney and Lucasfilm. Too much garbage at the top, namely Kathleen Kennedy. This is where the mediocrity is coming from. And quite frankly, Disney can't keep spending $200 and $250 $300 million perhaps in some cases on some of these Star Wars projects for this little of return. Disney Plus in the last 2 fiscal quarters has lost 600,000 some odd subscribers in North America, their most core of core markets. This is a problem. They lost 300,000 subscribers in the quarter alone when Mando Season 3 premiered. This should not be happening. And if Disney turns in yet another quarter coming up at the end of September 30th, where they lose more subs in North America, well, there's going to be some people out there that are going to get awful concerned, even more so than they are now. Ahsoka, I don't think, is going to move the needle, and she should be. She was one of the biggest fan favorites to come out of the more modern era of Star Wars. But it doesn't seem like Disney is expanding the audience whatsoever with these shows anymore. They've become stagnant. And in fact, the audiences pro rata have really declined, particularly when you consider the fact that Disney Plus has added some 15 million new subscribers in North America since the end of Mando Season 2. All of this is a big problem, and Disney had better take some serious stock of this very, very soon. And I think they know that there is an oversaturation of particularly mediocrity, or at least I hope they do for their sake. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Hit that like and subscribe, and until next time, take care.